Hey there, listener. Have you ever been through a heavy, dark time in your life? Have you heard the term nervous breakdown and wondered, am I having one of those? Today, I'm going to be talking with David Hulse, a vibrant spiritual guide who bridges the traditional doctrines with contemporary spiritual insights. We're going to be exploring what can turn a breakdown into a breakthrough and what it's like to start changing the religious conversation from talking about spiritualism or spirit to talking about energy. So if you've been wondering how you're going to get out of that dark hole that you may have been in over this winter, stay tuned. Every day there is a forgetting, and every moment there is the possibility of remembering. Remembering who you truly are, awakening to your body, to the inner world, to the experience of being alive. Here is where you find the beauty, the joy, and here is where you free your soma. I'm your host, Aimee. I'm here to help you move from pain to power, from tension to expansion, and ultimately from fear to love. Hi, David. Nice to finally meet you.
Hello, Aimee. Thank you. Thank you for having me today. I'm looking forward to our time together and our conversation.
Absolutely. Yes. I was looking over the different subjects that you explore, and there really is a wide range of things that you're able to talk about in great depth because of the background that you have and the life experiences that you've gone through and just the years working with people. So I'm really excited to see like the range that shows up in this kind of natural conversation between the two of us. And I usually start with a question to kind of invite you to dig in and see where this goes.
Okay.
And, on the subject of a nervous breakdown, right, which is sort of like a pinnacle, it's like the mountaintop that one might reach, but there's lots of heaviness on the way there, or lots of anxiety, or however it's showing up for a person, right? What would
Mhm.
you say to somebody who's in the middle of that, who's having their so-called dark night of the soul, and they feel like they don't see the end in sight? They don't know when this phase is going to end, right? What would you say to someone who's in the middle of it?
Okay. Well, I would say to them, lift your consciousness
Mm,
to see this from a higher state of consciousness that we would call, I guess, a spiritual point of view. You got to see it from the higher self. The higher
mm,
self sees all of this differently than our everyday mental consciousness sees it. You mentioned something a while ago that was very important. It was one of my twists on my path, and that had to do with, do you want to work with what's breaking down and fix it, or do you want to work with what's breaking through?
mm,
Now, I didn't get that intellectually at all what that meant at the time, but something kind of out of the cellular memory of my being said, I choose to work with what's breaking through. So that's what I've been doing for a lot of years, is trying to realize that all we need to do is remove some of these blockages of where we've gotten stuck in our religious influences, political, all of the 3D systems has kind of brought us to an end in itself of what it can give us. So
mm.
it's kind of imploding on itself and it's in a breakdown position. So we're living. Now, what I want to appeal to the listener out there for them to really feel, not think about what I'm getting ready to say, but I want them to feel like, have I chosen to be here at this time?
Mm.
Am I just an accident between my mother and dad coming together and creating a body for me? I think there's people out there in these podcasts like yours who need to understand that what is happening to them, whether we perceive it good or bad, is spiritual. It's
Mm.
spiritual. It's all about our evolution. It's all about getting us to the next level. So, going back to breakthrough, you have to realize the first thing that you're going to feel as new energy. I call it fifth dimensional energy. And that's just a number for communication. But if you look at three-dimensional time space, as Einstein talked about, we would 5D kind of as the next dimension that's coming into us. And 5D represents to me photon information or data that is trying to come in from 5D. And I hope we can talk about that a little bit later because I think that's the only way that we can navigate ourselves through this time of living through breakdown is to be able to have that higher vision of our purpose for being here at this particular time. But when this new energy, this new dimension gets into your field, we're talking to people who probably meditate, people who contemplate, people who are in spiritual type of modalities and whatever, who are open. They're
Right.
open. They've opened themselves to the next thing that's getting ready to happen on the planet. Well, the first place that you're going to experience that is in the nervous system.
Mm.
That's the first thing that is going to happen. It's going to happen there because it's the highway where everything is connected viscerally and into the body. Everything is connected by the nervous system. It's the carrier of information to every cell and every organ of our body. So a lot of people who are beginning to experience that begin to experience such changes as sleeping patterns. None of the old things work. 8 hours of sleep, eat 3 times a day. All of that gets disrupted as the nervous system is restructuring itself to fit the new energy that is coming in. So that's a time in which we can perceive it as a time of what's wrong with me. The things I'm familiar with is not happening to me. It's kind of a new territory.
Right. Yeah, the first word I think of is kind of like disorientation a bit. I have a mentor who describes it as the zone of incomprehensibility. Like we can't really
Mhm.
feel like all the things that we're used to are kind of shifting quickly and we're starting to feel very unstable. And that can show up in, like you said, judgments that we're having about ourselves or about the way that our life is going because things are shifting in a way that we're not able to predict like the next thing, right?
Exactly put. I know for me, since I've kind of in this level of teachings that we're talking about now, that my sleep patterns changed. I thought, oh my God, I've got insomnia. What's wrong with me? My eating changed. Things that I wanted, I don't want anymore. And the first thing that comes to you from your more human ego mind, I guess you could call it, is what something's wrong with you.
Hmm.
Because we think all change is something's wrong with us. And actually, it's the best thing that could be happening to people right now. So we've got to change their perception about what is happening to them. And the thing that I love about you and your title is bringing it into the soma
Hmm.
level because I think, as I told you earlier, I think we've bypassed the body long enough. The
Hmm.
within me message was very important from an old man out in the sky to a presence within ourselves was a very important step. But we can't get stuck there either, because what we've discovered in ourselves is becoming us all the way to the cellular level. And
Mm.
that's why you're feeling it in the nervous system. You're feeling it in your body. Symptoms. I know so many people, including myself, that gets a symptom. And when I react to it, I run to the doctor. The doctor takes the tests. They're fine and they can't diagnose me anymore because they don't know how to energetically diagnose you. That's what every doctor needs. When they put us in those little rooms and leave us for 20 minutes with nothing,
Mm.
wouldn't it be nice to have a practitioner come in with say, in my case, tuning forks, but with something energetically, Reiki or something like that, and literally energetically diagnose the patient before he comes in?
Mm.
Aimee, one thing that I love is about every doctor I go to, medical doctor I go to, has a tuning fork sitting there. If
Mm.
everybody will notice, there's a tuning fork in the room, and it's a 128 hertz tuning fork that is given to them in medical school to test such things as neuropathy on the feet or numbness or whatever. And I love picking that up and saying, a $20 million grant went in to study this tuning fork to prove that it spikes nitric oxide in the body. Wow. So they don't even know what they have sometimes, and what they could do if they would really look at things more from an energetic level than just a Western, more medical idea. So
Right.
yes, people are feeling this. It's intensified. We are coming closer and closer to the fulfillment of our simulated 3D world that has kind of run out of things for those who are growing and maturing. And I think we've got to look elsewhere to find our information from a higher state of consciousness.
Fascinating. Wow. I did not know that about the tuning forks, but it reminds me of kind of something we were chatting about earlier before we got, to recording, which is that at these like kind of like lower rungs of education, and you could say like lower rungs of consciousness, we've been taught that science and religion are somehow opposite each other, or that it's not evidence based to talk about energetic things or to talk about sound healing or tuning forks, right? But the
Mhm.
higher and higher you go in academia, the more learning and learning that you get to, when you get to things like quantum physics, it actually starts to overlap massively. And, the mystery of like what we don't know yet, and also looking at it as like, oh, there's all these very felt experiential
Mhm.
things that we go through as human beings that are now through the model of scientific research beginning to start being able to be explained through science, right? Not the other way around, not the other way where we like
Right.
need science to prove the things. It's like, no, science is catching up to what we experience and the incredible mechanisms of our bodies and our energy bodies. Science is just barely starting to understand what our physical bodies know at a deep energetic level, right? And so the tuning forks example was like a perfect example of that. Here are all these doctors, and some of them might like scoff at integrative medicine or sound healing, but little do they know in their office, a tool they were given was heavily researched to see that, oh, this sound or this vibration, as you said, has a very literal physical effect on a body. And you're going to use that in your practice for a specific thing. Did you know that your muscles are holding on to thoughts, memories, and feelings? If you have a tight neck or back, you're not just getting old, you're experiencing a buildup of tension from the life you've lived. Most people don't know this, but there is a part of your brain that can reverse and prevent chronic tension. When you relax your muscles, you not only move better and regulate your nervous system, but you also free yourself from the grip the past has over your body. So you can live with freedom, confidence, and enjoy your life now. How does that sound? Join me, Aimee Takaya, and discover what my clients are raving about at youcanfreeyoursoma.com.
Right. Right. A part of the soma, which is a Greek word, and of course, my background in theology, I learned Greek in the New Testament because nobody spoke English in the Bible. Christians need to realize that nobody spoke English. What did they say? And you'll never know until you go back into Hebrew and to Greek and Aramaic also
Right.
is very important. But this word soma doesn't cover just what my senses see as a physical body, but there's a part of my physiology it does not see called my etheric
Mm.
body or my etheric blueprint. And that is where cause is. Body is just the effect.
Oh,
So,
wow. Yeah. Say
yeah.
that, say
So,
that again for everyone.
yeah, the etheric blueprint. Let me tell you about the etheric blueprint is made out of the higher energy bodies coalescing into a blueprint.
Mm.
Off your crown, what we call the crown chakra, the crown energy, spins off into a etheric body. Now, that etheric body is what holds your blueprint as being created whole. See, we're already created whole. That's already done. We got to stop coming from, I don't have it, I need to get it, to I have it and I've forgotten and I need to remember it.
Mm.
So
Hmm.
we're moving from linear to vertical.
Yeah.
That's what the cross means. It means coming to a crossroads in consciousness in which you're no longer in this level, but now quantum physics is showing us that anything that ever was or could be is now in this moment. So we've
Mm.
got to get to that place. But then you have the causal, the mental, the emotional, the astral, all of those coalesce into an etheric blueprint that cells read as they replicate themselves. I heard Deepak Chopra many, many years ago. I read it in a book that the liver makes itself every 6 weeks. That was a tough one because I thought my liver is as old as I am, but actually it's making itself constantly because cells are dying and replicating, even as we're sitting here talking.
Right.
Trillions and hundreds of thousands of cells will die and whatever. So somebody said to me, well, if that's true and I had cancer, say, of the liver, why would I have cancer 6 weeks later if the liver has made itself again? because you didn't change the blueprint that caused the cancer.
Mm.
So, in my training of Soma Energetics, I taught people how to use tuning forks in the etheric body, which is the body of cause.
Mm.
And we know that things in the etheric body, such as unresolved issues, whether it's past lives or whatever your belief is of your past, but what has not been balanced and aligned to your true authentic self ends up dissonant.
Mm.
So with tuning forks, I'm looking for the dissonant in the etheric body. And then we change it because here's what we know, Aimee, that's so exciting. We know this now that all diseases and illnesses are 10 months to a year in the etheric body before they become physical. So if we can change the etheric cause, we can have a different outcome in the
Right.
physical body. So
Well,
what I'm saying to you, the etheric body is a part of our physiology.
it
It's
is.
just
Yeah.
it's just beyond our sensory perception.
Beyond our sensory perception. That's a great way to put it. I'm thinking of like, that kind of classic book, How to Heal Your Life with Louise Hay, where she talks about, the causes and how a lot of them are, as you said, like emotional and mental constructs, right? But I want to take it a step further and say that they are also a sense that we have. It's not a knowing. It's not like we are aware of it. A lot of 99% of it, I think, is unconscious until we have an illness, till we have pain somewhere in our body, right? That's the point where it's already gotten to, an extreme level where we can measure it in this 3D consciousness, right? But what you're speaking to is that this is already going on, like you said, 10 months to a year prior, right? And then if you can think about people who spend a lot of their time in a certain consciousness, like say the consciousness of bitterness and anger or resentment, right? They're spending a lot of their time and it's in their causal body that there's this constriction of, feeling like they're not supported or feeling like people aren't respecting them or whatever it kind of intellectually like gets described as. It's also a sense, it's a feeling that they're having, it's a
Mm.
physical thing. What does it feel like to feel resentful in your body? It's a feeling, right? Along with certain kinds of thoughts, certain kinds of emotions, and all of that is, as you said, over time going to have an impact on our physical body and changing the way that we are sensing and perceiving ourselves and other people has a massive shift on every other level of like our state of being, including our physical body.
It kind of reverberates out.
Yes, that's a great
It's
word.
like it's like dropping a pebble into a pond and it rippling out, way beyond the space that it actually hit. And
Mm.
that's what's happening right now. There's a rippling out of this energy with new vibrations and frequencies that has not been part of the so-called third dimensional norm. So everything that's happening to us doesn't feel normal to us in the beginning when we're in our reactive mind because we've adapted. We've adapted to a lot of lack in our life. And,
Mm.
religion has been there to support that idea that you can't really have peace or health or anything in this world of sin. You have to wait until you die and go to heaven, and then you can have all of this. And that is not at all what is taught in the true. I teach a lot on the Nag Hammadi lost books of the Bible. And if you really get into those before man tampered with all of this, you'll see a whole different teaching completely that is more in line with what we're talking about now, even though that was 2,000 years ago in the first and second century before religion became institutionalized and centralized and dogmatized to be this and everything else is heretic. I'm proud to be a heretic in that way of perception
Right.
because I think that we're coming back to a powerful time of remembering a lot of what we have forgotten because it's not been awakened in our consciousness through these systems of education, religion, or any other system has really not kept us informed of truly who we are until we have laid with this pseudo self, the
Mm.
person we think we are, which is a bunch of labels that have been put on us. And you got to peel those labels away. You got to realize I did a teaching this Sunday in my spiritual center here on the power of the I am, the term I am. And I was talking about how right now across town, there's a group saying, I am an alcoholic. There's another group over here saying, I'm a born again Christian. There's a group over here saying, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm an atheist. But they all only heard the label. They
Mm,
didn't hear that they all came from the very same point in consciousness, I am.
mm.
And you know what, Aimee? If we could stop the labels and all just come into a collective I am, we could totally wake up out of the illusion of separation and of this 3D world.
Wow. Yeah. You know, I think of it as like when you just say I am, there's possibility, there's endless possibility, and there's so
Exactly.
much that you could, orient to at any moment, right? That you could meet the moment of whatever's happening with your full presence and awareness. When you start to really funnel all of that presence and awareness into, as you say, a label or as a thing that you are, now you're incredibly limited. You've just
Mm.
limited your perception, you've just limited the people, you've drawn lines in the sand between who you can relate to and who you can't. And I think that a lot of us, we want to live and be more limitless as human beings, right? But, what do you think it is about, humans that at the same time as we might want to be limited, why is it we choose to limit ourselves? Why is it we make ourselves smaller?
Well, I think we're still under such a powerful morphogenic of consciousness that reminds us every day of who we are not, but who we think we are. I think the system supports that.
Yeah.
It supports separation, it supports lack, it supports need. And I'm just so excited that, and I've been in this a long time, and I've been pretty alone out there 30 years ago or so, but now it's just breaking through everywhere. It's coming out everywhere. More about our authenticity and who we truly are. Some call it the divine self, some call it Christ consciousness. Whatever you choose to call it, doesn't matter, but we are discovering ourselves. And as we do that, I think we're going to awaken one of the greatest spiritual so-called tools that we have, and that's our intuition.
Mm,
We need right now to be extremely intuitive about what we're qualifying as our beliefs, as our realities. And I think that this is something that all of us need to really be empowering people with, is the ability. I love this idea in quantum physics of the silent observer.
mm,
That has helped me so much. I'll have a group sometime just close their eyes and visualize a red apple or something like that. And then I ask them who's looking at the apple. And I think once we get out of the perception of ourselves as we've been made from the outside and start observing ourselves from the inside out, we begin to see areas of ourself that need to be realigned, need to be balanced and tuned. I like this tuned idea. You can do that through crystal bowls, you can do that through so many things. And the thing that I love about bowls and tools like that is they're not plugged into the grid.
mm.
I know this sounds old fashioned. I'm aging myself, but I love the idea of a tuning fork that I don't have to use technology for it. It's just a pure raw vibration that's not connected into the system
Right.
of technology whatsoever. And I have found that to be a very powerful tool for me.
Yeah, I mean, I have a singing bowl up there that I use, after I do body work with someone. And, what I usually will say, if they're not familiar with it, is like, okay, we just did all this neuromuscular work. We just got your nervous system to release all of these, contractions that were going on, and they feel very like kind of open. And then I usually say, and now this, sound that I'm going to bring in is going to kind of invite the energy field to shift more fully and complete kind of the work that we did with your
Mhm.
physical body. It's going to now like invite what's ready to let go or move away to do that. And it's a pretty strong bowl. It's a 432 hertz A, and it's
Mhm.
made with
Powerful.
crystal that has lapis infused in it. So it's a pretty strong sound. The woman I worked with yesterday, she said she felt it bilaterally. She felt like it
Mm.
go in and out of both ears, which I know has, some different kinds of brain benefits to stimulate the both sides of our cortex.
I'm
Yeah.
just going to ask you if you are familiar with the solfeggio frequencies.
What are the solfeggio frequencies?
Yeah, that's what my tuning forks are based on, solfeggio frequencies. Solfeggio frequencies were frequencies. We don't know how far it goes back. We can trace it to Egypt. I think maybe it's a possibility Atlantis. It's how far your consciousness will take you back. But they were really sung in the pre-Catholicism.
Mm.
All these religions all started out more mystical.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Christianity didn't start out as the Christianity we know today. There was the Essenes, there was the Gnostics, there was early people for that. In Judaism, it was the Kabbalah. In Islam, it was the Sufis. And all of these are the early people before man got in there and organized it into the religion that it is. And so when the Catholic Church was doing Latin, they were singing these frequencies called solfeggio. They're all in Latin, and many wonderful things were happening when they did the Gregorian chants in these particular frequencies. And then, as the church would do, brought in somebody and said, no, we cannot teach these any longer. We're going to teach it differently. So they changed the frequency.
Mm.
Just like you mentioned 432, this is
Yeah, it's
the
changed
original
to
frequency.
440 now, right?
Yeah, so that's all been changed, which makes us live an untuned life because we're not aligned, because frequency is what aligns us in that way. But I wanted to say, when he came along and changed it to do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, which is a Western idea, do was oot or ut quint laxes. And he came along and said, but we can't sing a song or a tone that ends in a consonant, and it has to be a vowel. And he changed it to do. Next thing
Okay.
we know, we have Julie Andrews in the meadow with the kids saying do, a deer, a female deer. So unfortunately, Western music, and I'm not saying I don't like it because I grew up with it, but it's not helped us. It's literally, if you study it, is a scale that boxes us in
Mm.
because it's a closed octave system. C to C, C to C, C to C. Now, over 2,700 or so years ago, there was a guy who said, wait a minute, let's not close the octave. And his name was Pythagoras. And Pythagoras says, let's don't close the octave. And when he didn't do it, he found it spiraled and spiraled
Mm.
and spiraled into the heavens, meaning the planets and the moons and the because they're all spinning, right? And what's spinning is making a sound.
Mm.
I used to carry this hose around to the workshops and I go like this, go woo, 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 at some point. Well, the planets are making a sound. And he brought those sounds down to earth, heaven to earth, actually vibrationally in what's called the music of the spheres, if you've heard that
Mm.
term. And so uh, the solfeggio kind of is that part of not closing 12 tone temperament, Western music, but it's opening it and catching the cycle because everything is cyclical in that way. Everything spirals. That's why
Right.
we have what we call chakras. Because if you can see energy spiraling, it looks like a wheel, right? Which is the Sanskrit word chakra. So everything is trying to find the cosmic spin, which quantum physics always, that nothing is solid, but things are in movement and spin all the time. That's what they are. So anyway, that was lost by the 17th century. It was rediscovered in 1974. And that's when I came along and I was doing DNA activation workshops. And I was told that the reason sometimes that positive thinking doesn't always work is because even when we think positive, we will go back to the blueprint of our humanity, which is our DNA.
Right.
And so out of nowhere, I decided I wanted to know more about DNA. Well, as the universe would do, somebody I hadn't heard from years called me and said, I don't know why I'm calling you. Oh, by the way, there's a doctor in California that's teaching DNA activation workshops. And I thought, wait a minute, DNA is set in stone. Now this is before Bruce Lipton,
Right,
who's
right.
made
And
all of this.
also the understanding of our the way the DNA turns on and off the epigenetics. This is before the understanding
Epigenetics.
of
I mean,
that.
this
Yeah.
is this is way before that. So I was ahead there. I didn't have the support of what we have now. But anyway, I just went out and took this extensive workshop about DNA. I learned more about DNA than I needed to know. And but the thing that I noticed, he taught us how to activate the double helix uh, by using these sounds, which he had recorded with intuitives who had watched people doing Reiki, people doing different modalities, energy work, and transposed it into sound or vibration. So I went around the country kind of doing that. Make a long story short as I can, I wanted one of those frequencies was 528 hertz,
Mm.
which biochemists were using to repair DNA. And I thought, I've got to have it. Well, 528 would sound to the brain because the brain generalizes a C above a C, but it's not. That's not the frequency. It's close, but it's not. So I didn't know what to do. Then the universe shows up again with somebody I hadn't heard of. And they're saying, David, there's a guy in New York that can make a tuning fork into any frequency you want. And so that's when I learned that this 528 was a part of five other frequencies called solfeggio. And I said, well, let's just have them all made. And that's what changed my world. When I held
Oh,
those forks in my hand, I stood at a fork in the road. That's the name of my book, by the way, A Fork in the Road. And that's when I began to get downloads. And I've spent the last 25 years training people all over the world in 6 languages and whatever. And I've just passed that on to other owners right now who are continuing to do the work. But I think everything is going to have to come back to vibration.
mm.
Not to get too biblically on you, but it's interesting that the Bible starts out and God moved across the face of the deep. I thought, what in the world does that mean, God moved? And I began to do deep research on that word moved. And one of the older translations said, and God fluttered.
Mm.
Well, that's interesting. Then in the literal concordant, I found, and God vibrated.
Right.
To have the new earth we're talking about, to have this better place that we're all aspiring to, we have got to go back and change things at the level of vibration.
Right. Well, and to get it kind of a little playful with what you just described, like
Sure.
when we think of a flutter or and even a movement, right? There's a beginning, a middle, and an end to a movement, or there's even a rhythm to our feet as we step one after another. And so, in a sense, it's pulsation, which is another word maybe for vibrate, this pulsating, like a flutter is a pulsing, if you can imagine the way a moth moves or wings flap, right? And so, there's again a pulsation that is part of the existence of things, the existence of energy, as we could say, right? That it
Right.
pulses, and in that pulsation there's a sound, like that's rhythm. That's the rhythm of our heartbeat, that's the pulsation of our blood throughout our body. Like we are that, and there is a tone to it. I want to ask something kind of,
Mhm.
as we mentioned earlier on about like the dark night of the soul, or going through these physiological changes that can feel very disorienting and confusing. What might it be, if there's a few possibilities, when somebody's having like auditory stuff showing up, like ringing in their ears, or popping, or different tingling sensations in their ears? What does that kind of stuff possibly mean or represent?
Great question. Great question. And I have had a lot of clients with tinnitus, with that sound in the ear thing. Now, I want to say, before I say anything else, that sometimes these things need to be medically looked at. I'm not against that. I'm not against people going and seeing what the doctor says and getting your diagnosis, and then, but not giving your power away to it. Come back, meditate, get with an energy person, and see exactly what's going on from a different level. So I think that I forgot what I was going to say because I had about 10 things going into my head. But if we can really tap into the energy thing. Now, this dark night of the soul is a very spiritual experience. And I'm a believer at one level of consciousness that there is only light. That is the reality. I could simply tell you right now where I am, the sun is shining. And I know that's day because the source of light out there is the sun.
Mm.
Now, this evening, there will not be any sun, and I will call it night. But there is no source of night. There's nothing causing night other than the absence of the sun. So, what I'm getting to is I really found my answer about this light and dark thing in a quote from Carl Jung, if I'm saying that right, the psychologist, Swiss psychologist, who said that darkness is unconscious light.
Mm.
Oh, whoa. I mean, that was a gnosis moment for me. It was an epiphany. I get it. There really is no darkness or night. There is just an absence. And I think right now, the more 3D simulated world becomes more distant to us, more diminished, less strong to us, that there is that place in between
Mm.
where things start looking like it's darkness, but it's actually unconscious light that is coming in. And that's why uh, programs like this and platforms like this is so important that people can go, okay, that means that there's parts of me that's been in the dark. See what I'm saying? If you don't know something, you're in the dark about it. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean
Yeah.
you're stupid or something's wrong with you. It means I've not been exposed to that information. But as we are expanding even today, the consciousness for people, they're going to find out there will be less darkness in their dark night of the soul as it becomes more light of the new that is emerging in. It's kind of the darkness before the light kind of idea that we're going.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, and also like when you're in it, and this is something that I've been exploring a lot in my own experience is like sometimes the heavy feeling in your body and the overwhelm and the things that people label bad, sometimes it's actually a very intelligent strategy to like get myself to rest, to stop doing and to start receiving and opening to receiving, right? And a lot of times people resist that because they think something's wrong and then they try to like take some kind of action to fix the problem versus kind of surrendering and allowing yourself to rest in that darkness to allow for the shift and the change and the healing that your body might need to do, that your consciousness might need to do. If say on a more kind of energetic level, there's a letting go going on in your life, letting go
Mm.
of a relationship, letting go of a place that you lived, letting go of whatever it is, right? A job, an identity, right? There's a grief process in the letting go. And letting go, it is a surrendering. It's kind of an opening of your hand to let whatever was there fall away, right? And it's natural for there to kind of be an emptiness at that moment of the letting go process, right? And it's like, can we trust that? Can we trust that it's okay to let go, that it's okay to feel the sadness that comes with letting go, right? Or do we keep gripping and gripping and gripping and trying to hold on and make the process more and more unpleasant and uncomfortable for ourselves, right? Like that's kind of how I see it when I'm going through these moods, you might say, have moods that I go through as a woman or, as a person, right?
Sure.
And can I rest in my mood? Can I let myself be in the mood that I'm in? Can I let myself be tired and, grumpy and just rest in that? And when I do that, it has way less control over me because like and another way to put it would be like I kind of let the light in. I surrendered the grip and I surrendered the battle. And in doing that, then the light starts to kind of come into that dark space with me, you know, and all of it gets illuminated even just 2%. And it's less scary.
That's very good. I like what you just said. That's amazing. Yes, I think we need to look at this whole idea of the dark side of the soul and darkness as a different thing. It's interesting you said that because I just told a group recently to quit fighting the fact if you feel like you want to be inactive, if you want to go lay down, if you want to take a nap, don't let that ego mind go in you. You're lazy. You should be doing something all the time to be productive. No, I think that we're getting so close now that a lot of our soul level is doing some really intense work right now. And I've noticed, and I'll just put this out for anybody that wants to see if they resonate with it, but there's something going on from about 3 to 5 o'clock in the mornings for people. So if there's anybody out there that's waking up and you think, oh my God, I've got to have this 8 hours sleep, I can't make it to work or whatever, I think there's something it's a portal that's opening up for some spiritual work to be done right now. And as you said, we need not to struggle and fight against these things because we make it stronger, actually, than if we give in to it.
Yeah.
I read a book years ago, and one of the chapters was a quote, again, out of the Bible, but I never heard anybody talk about it. But it is the teacher saying, agree with thine adversary quickly, lest he bring you before the judge and cast you into prison. I
Mm.
thought, what an interesting statement. I've never heard it in the church I was grown up, but the word agree means to understand. So the more people understand what's going on with them, that this is very spiritual or energetic in nature, and it's not something's wrong or I'm being punished or I didn't meditate long enough or I should have stayed with my qigong and I've been missing my yoga classes. All those things that tries to accuse us of not being enough. And he that understands the adversary understands it's not your adversary, it's your teacher. It's your opportunity. This is when we grow the most when we're going through it. You mentioned moods. I think that's like an orchestra. Your body is like an orchestra, okay? And you go down to the symphony and you go in, and all of the different instruments are trying to tune, and it sounds awful. I mean, the violins are over here screeching,
Cacophony.
and yeah, it's horrible. Like, oh my God, this is not even music. This is just a bunch of annoying sound to me. And then after every part has done its part to tune itself, and the conductor comes out with that baton, and that music comes out together. I don't care if you're a music are trained in music, you feel it. Like you said, you feel it in your body, you feel it in your whole being that something has come together in harmony and alignment. And I'm predicting that's going to happen very quickly. Even no matter how bad the world looks right now, and through my five senses, I'm not real happy about what a lot of things that's going on politically or whatever, but I'm seeing that it's all coming as an opportunity for fast, quick growth as we continue on our point of awakening.
Mm.
I noticed in the Bible, it says, and Adam, a deep sleep came on Adam, and I never found where he woke up. So it wasn't like it was sleep. There is the word stupor, or the word we get stupid, but it means a word that went into an illusion, a maya, or a dream.
An unconsciousness. Yeah.
An unconsciousness, exactly. And then I don't think that happened, didn't wake up until all of the incarnations of the Adamic soul ended up 2,000 years ago as Yeshua, the Christ of God. And therefore, the Bible says he was the last Adam. So everything between is the dream. It is the illusion of separation and all of that. So that's why I named my academy the Academy for Spiritual Awakening, because all through the Bible it was awake, awake thou that sleepest, shake yourself from the dust, awake and sin no more, awake, awake, awake. And I thought, well, we must be asleep. And
Right,
then,
right.
yeah, we must be in a state in which we're dreaming this whole thing, and it's not reality. But I'll tell you what helped me that came along was A Course in Miracles.
Yes.
Marianne Williamson,
Hmm.
back in the 80s, was what gave me the religious language I needed, but a different perception
Yeah.
of how to look at these things. But anyway, that's
Yeah.
kind
It's interesting you bring up A Course in Miracles. I had been kind of wondering, I was wondering where kind of the link or the change and the shift came from, the kind of, religious perspective and moving it into these other dimensions. And that makes perfect sense. My dad has done the year, the whole book in an entire year, everyday lessons. He's done it
yeah.
7 times,
Wow,
which is a pretty big accomplishment, I
that
think,
is.
because it's a lot. And then, so I grew up around it. And then actually I've learned this, it's a very fascinating thing. My mentor, Eleanor Criswell Hanna, she's an academic. Now she's passed this last September, but her publishing company back in like whenever it was published in the 60s was the first to publish A Course in Miracles before it was officially published. Like the first
Okay.
draft was published by her. So I just
Right.
find it very fascinating. Like it's kind of like these themes, that we get to experience in our lives that sort of point us in a direction. And, then there's people who are probably listening who may have never even heard of A Course in Miracles,
I
right?
know.
And
I
yet it's
know.
been something that's been in my energetic field like pretty much my whole life in various ways, right?
A Course in Miracles finds you, I think, more than you
Yeah.
find it. But I needed it because in 1988, I had an experience that I lost my belief in God. Well,
Mm.
I'd been ministering for years, so I was pretty, excuse my term, pissed about it. Like, this is where I end up, all these years of preaching about God and all that. And then all of a sudden now I don't know if there's a God. But I tell you, Aimee, bottom line, what I found out is that I didn't lose whatever we call God. To me, God is an intelligence, a consciousness that's undefinable, non-local. It just is, whatever it is. It's an intelligence that's always working toward the higher good of all things. But I didn't lose God. I lost my belief in God as I was taught it by my religion. But I had made that become God.
Mm.
People make God psychologically an idol in their mind of what they're told God is. And there's a place, if you allow me, that I really like in Psalms that says, they made idols that had eyes that could not see, ears that could not hear, a throat that could not speak, feet that could not walk. But the scary part is the next verse, and they became like them.
Mm.
So when I have an idol of God in my mind, that God is vindictive, guess what? I will be vindictive.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, so interesting that quote right there. I feel like that's that Simon and Garfunkel song.
It's Psalms 115
Right,
for
but
reference, if anybody's
people
interested.
talking without speaking, people hearing without
Yeah, yeah,
listening, the sounds of
yes.
silence, right? Hello, darkness, my old
I
friend, right?
love
I
that. I
bet
love it.
that's where they got that from. I bet they got that from the Psalm, right?
I
And
think
about
so.
the idolizing that we create in our brains and then end up mimicking, right? And I think that that's like very natural. And you're hearing a lot of people nowadays talking about like, oh, it's about the main five people that you spend time around. You become most like them, right? So
Yes.
choose your company carefully, right? And we can think about that like energetically, or even nervous system wise, like we're co-regulating with other people's nervous systems. Right now,
Mhm.
people listening to us, to the vibrations of our voice, maybe they're seeing us on the YouTube video, right? They're engaged with our experience and our perspective and our nervous systems right now, even across the ether of the internet, right? And then, that's like you said, why conversations like this and having people, to listen to interact with, it's so vital to our growth because, they could be listening to something else right now that was be having a completely different effect on their consciousness,
That's right.
putting them in a state of fear, putting them in a state of being disempowered and frustrated, right? And then they'd be carrying that with them in their body and in their nervous system for the rest of the day, right?
Right. Absolutely. So we are vibrational frequency beings that's always creating an environment out of our frequencies and vibrations. And who comes into the what we call the field? The field is my world that I live in. And who comes into my world and is going to somehow interact with my frequency and vibration. I'm going to interact with their frequency and vibration. So I think the more conscious we become, the more awake we become to be more mindful
Right.
of how that we're co-creating our environments,
Yes.
the more easy that it's going to be for us. My
Yes.
favorite analogy, and it's been worn out, but it's that little caterpillar guy. I love the caterpillar story so much because he's nibbling on his leaf and he's eating all of his resources, just like we're doing in 3D. We're just kind of destroying our resources. And he comes to the end of his resources, or she, whatever, and says, "Where do I go from here?" I think there's people out there that's saying the same thing. Where do I go from here? My religion didn't quite do it for me. I've tried this, all these things. I'm just kind of at the end. But you can't be at the end if you're not also at the beginning. Beginnings
Mm.
cause ends. And I just think people should realize that that little caterpillar at that moment, and it took that moment, that something awoke in that caterpillar that caterpillar didn't know it had. How
Mm.
many people listening to us really know their own potential? We only use 3% of our genetic material. Einstein used 10% of his mental consciousness. If these people are using those kind of numbers, what are we using every day?
Yeah.
Most of us. Another thing that changed everything for me when I was kind of transitioning out of ministry was I was in Memphis, Tennessee, horrible situation. They put me in a horrible motel. It was a dangerous part of town. Anyway, it was just not a good situation. And that's the time I was losing God at the same time.
Mm.
So here I was trying to teach and do this thing, but I wasn't into it whatsoever. And a woman brought me a little, at that time, cassette tape. She said, I bought this at the store, but I didn't like it. I didn't like what was being said. I threw it in the trash. But this morning, something said to me, she called it spirit, said to her, go get that out of the trash. It wasn't for you, it's for David. So she brought it to the class and gave it to me. Well, people give me stuff all the time, but I stuck it in my coat pocket. And so I go back to this motel. I can't get out. I don't have a car. TV don't work. I'm depressed. I'm losing God. Oh, what a mess I was in. Talk about dark night of the soul. I was in it. And so I was sitting in this chair, just kind of, and I did carry a little cassette tape player to travel with. And something said, go get that tape. It's out of your pocket. So I went and got that tape. I don't know why I'm telling this, but somebody out there needs to hear this story for somebody that they're there. And I was listening to this tape, had a heavy accent, wasn't Bible oriented, wasn't anything in my head that I was referring to anything this man was saying at all. But I was just kind of listening because there was nothing else to do. I was so bored. And as I did, I kind of went into that state of between sleep and awake, kind of nodding off. And the voice said on the tape, quantum physics has found out what we called empty space in the cell is not a vacuum, but a plenum of an subtle electromagnetic field of all possibility. And Aimee, I shot up out of that chair. Every cell in my body, talk about a somatic experience. My body lit up. My brain's still over here going, what? What does this mean? But my body got it. And I had what I call a cellular awakening, that the empty space was my own potential that had
Yes.
not been awakened and made conscious yet.
Love
So
it.
now it's being made awakened yet, and it's being awakened as light information. I just did a workshop yesterday on the power of light language. I don't
Mm.
know if you're familiar with light
I am
language.
familiar with light language. I have a friend
Oh,
who
good.
speaks light
Yay.
language. Yes, yes. I,
Yes, I
I
just
want to
did it.
say something about your story. I love
Okay.
that story. I love it. And I think that there's a really interesting kind of parallel because when okay, so I'm going to talk about kind of what you were talking about, but on a muscular nervous system state. So you are in this motel, right? And you're in it. You're in your pattern of frustration. You're looking around you, and everything is kind of a feedback loop for that frustration, right?
Right.
And in that frustration, there is literally probably like a muscle pattern or a contraction of your muscles in your body that goes with that, conscious or unconscious. Maybe you laid down because you're tired from your shoulders from standing around all day, or your feet hurt, right? That's how it might show up at the moment. When our brains are busy running those loops, running those patterns, it's not new. It's not fresh. It's like the old thing is going, going, going. And then there was this moment of, you said, this cellular awakening where you realized that even amongst that pattern, those well-worn tracks of your neurological pathways firing, the frustration and the annoyance and the exhaustion and all of that, just like just like imagine those pathways, just outside of those pathways are space of possible experience. And you got that. It's like the cells of your body got that. What you were experiencing, your perception at that moment, was just a well-worn pathway that you happened to be on, but yet there was the potential for any other possible way of seeing or viewing or experiencing your body and your reality that could happen. And in that moment, you had this awakening. Now, this is extremely similar to the work that I do with people. And when I do the neuromuscular release work, people describe, oh, how does your leg feel? Oh, it feels light. They literally say it feels like light. Sometimes
Mm,
they say it visually, like when they sense from the inside, this side of my body is light and this side is
mm,
dark, right?
mm,
And
mhm.
they will describe it as light. And I talk about those well-worn pathways, those contractive patterns of how we've been seeing and viewing things. It's our untapped human potential. Because when we're caught up in all that, we can't see what we really are. we can't see other people and other situations as they are. We only see them as that well-worn pathway would have us look through that tiny little window of
Mhm.
possibility, right? That
Mhm.
narrow view of I am exhausted and frustrated, right? So I thought your story was so brilliant because it really shows that that space outside the pathway that we're on, the track that we're on, that dark night, it's always available. It's actually always there. And it's about remembering that it exists
Yes,
and that
yes,
whatever we're seeing or viewing at this moment isn't all that there is.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well put. I'm going to use that. Very well translated into a more somatic interpretation, which is what you do. And I love that. Absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know, sometimes I call that a sacred still point.
Mm,
It's when the pendulum stops to go this way, but I never see it. I don't know when it does, but it had to stop somewhere. And I think it's in that idea. Even the old quote, be still and know,
mm.
idea. There is a still point between somatic. I want to thank you for that. That was really helpful to me to bring it into
Oh,
more a way of explaining it that people can understand that. Wow, this is so exciting to have this connection with you. That because I never know in these podcasts, and I do a lot of so far so good, but this is a real good match for that way. But that changed everything for me. Is I realized that maybe what we're calling the divine within is my own potential that has not been awakened into consciousness.
mm.
So I saw this God thing as a more abstract thing than somebody that's anthropomorphic,
Right.
man in the sky kind of
Some
thing.
father figure who's failing you right now,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
that changed everything. And just so happened it was at that time that Course in Miracles came along. So it was a really nice transition for me because I was still wrestling with, well, what's this sin thing? What is that? And Course in Miracles gave me such a wonderful way of using the language I had downloaded, from my religion and using it to make a new program. And they call that a shift in perception. You know,
Right.
yeah, it
Wow.
was
Well, this has
amazing.
been an absolutely amazing conversation. I'm loving this. Want to go back to the question I had asked earlier that you only partially answered because we got kind of
Okay. All right.
distracted, but the tinnitus thing or the ear thing,
Oh,
right? And also this idea of like, when people are starting to have auditory, they're either hearing things or they're not hearing things, right? Like it could be selective hearing or hearing loss, right? What do you think that that can represent in a person, besides the medical things that it might be? Like what could it be shifting in them or asking to be shifted in them?
if a person is at a level along their path that they've done the things to open themselves up energetically and spiritually to dimensions beyond our sensory, are the people that can begin to pick up. And I think this is a whole different subject, but through the activation of the pineal gland,
Mm,
the pineal gland becomes a vibrating antenna that is able to bypass ego, 3D, 4D consciousness and start bringing in fresh consciousness. And consciousness comes in the form of vibration, as we've established, but you said it yourself, the vibration is a sound. So people start picking up the new thing that is trying to come in to be made conscious in them only through these different sounds that they have. Now, in my case, I use different tuning forks to see, does this match the sound that you're hearing? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. And like we both established here, we want to be clear that some of these things are physical issues and things that need to be looked at in that way. But there's a lot of people out there that's not getting an answer through that way, through the Western medical thing. And that's the people that I invite really look into this energetically. Find people that work with energy and vibration and sound. And I think that they will find out that actually these are new vibrations and frequencies that are trying to integrate into the vibrations and energy that is stable and normal to them to expand it.
wow. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like both something that can be determined and looked at from a medical standpoint and something that can be investigated more deeply in an energetic and spiritual way. And I love that you're open to both of those ways of interpreting things. And I think both are important often for, both our linear brain and our like
Yeah.
expanded consciousness to really grasp the totality of something, right? So,
That's what I think 5D is going to be. It's going to be spirituality and science together. East and West meet, body and mind, spirit meet. I think all these things that have been put in their own little compartments are going to come together. In fact, my email is Crelution because I've married creation and evolution together because
mm,
I believe they work together beautifully. You don't have to be, it's not a black and white world anymore. There's many
right,
gray areas that a lot of us have been lost in because there wasn't a system out there for us. So let's create one. Let's
right.
co-create. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing today, right here. We're
Absolutely.
co-creating a whole new system of thinking for those that are ready to step into it and to experience this expansion today.
Beautiful, beautifully said. Yeah. Thank you so much for this conversation. I
Oh,
feel like
thank
we
you.
really have illuminated all the different possibilities of what a dark night could be and what that could look like, right? From not only an energetic but a somatic standpoint. And thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom. I'm sure we could keep talking for several more hours, but we'll leave people wanting more. Can you tell people
Yes.
where they can find out more information about your work and your academy?
Sure. The Academy is the Academy for Spiritual Awakening, and you can get on that by just going to davidhulse.com right now. So that's Hulse, like your pulse, davidhulse.com. And we're trying to bring together a community of people who are really searching to become more aligned with transformation.
Mm.
You know, and that's what we said earlier. If we dance with it and not fight it, we can get much more along toward our path. So you can get on there right now. And what I'm offering is an awakening sampler. So that means for free, you can download a lot of samples of a lot of the classes that I do. I start classes with people just coming out of Bible 101 and talk about the Greek and the Hebrew and try to clean that up. So you got to clean that
Mm.
3D religious thing up before you move into the next level. And there's going to be meditations. There's going to be times of being with me, master classes, and whatever. So I'd really love for anybody out there that's resonating with that to get on www.davidholtz.com and kind of
Yeah.
look around and see what it's there. And I want to thank
Yeah.
you so much for having me today. It's been a delightful match in this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, people listening, check that out, especially if you have some religious trauma or hangups with Christianity. Maybe you were raised in a really like narrow viewpoint and you are looking to expand that. David sounds like a perfect match for someone who is ready to step into a new dimensional way of being and integrate that with the old viewpoints and the old, systems that weren't quite hitting the mark, right?
If you would allow me, I'd also like to announce I'm a spiritual leader of a community here in Charlotte called Heartlight Spiritual Community. And all my teachings and sermons and messages are all on heartlightcharlotte.org. That's heartlightcharlotte.org. You can check out tons of stuff that I've done on Wednesday classes and Sundays also. So thank you for letting me mention that too.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
we'll
Hope we can do it
continue.
again sometime.
Absolutely. We'll continue to be in touch. Hey there, friend. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I would love to hear your thoughts. Follow me on Instagram at Aimee Takaya and send me a DM about this episode. I'd like to thank you for being part of this somatic revolution. And if you'd like to support the podcast and help more people learn about somatics, consider leaving a review or a rating. And finally, if you'd like to have the experience of relief in your tight hips or back and learn to understand what your body is really saying to you, visit youcanfreeyoursoma.com. I can't wait to share with you what is truly possible. Bye for now.